Yeah, good evening, sir. Good evening, everyone. For this special session of this Enoch webinars. So Today, actually, as we all know, that Government of India has already rolled out this COVID-19 vaccination program across India, and lot of myths and lot of questions are there within our minds and in the mind of the general public. So especially like we all are working, Dr. Chandna, we are all working in industries, and many of our senior people, they are also leaders in different organizations. So lot of queries are there, so it is we thought it is better to get our questions, our queries clarified through an expert person like you. And we are fortunate enough to have you during this special session. So normally, as you have already conducted one session of this webinar on one Saturday, so but this time we thought, ki, let us keep it in between, and we should be abreast with the latest information, what is there, which can clear our doubts, and in turn, we can convince our management of workforce in our respective industries to go for vaccination whenever it is available, because a lot of questions, they come to us also. So before we start this program, let me request our president of IS Delhi branch, Dr. Gajen Kumar sir, to welcome. So you are not audible, sir.
Okay,
Yeah.
yes. I'm audible.
Yes, yes.
Good evening, friends, and welcome to this 43rd issue of our webinar series. And today topic is very, very important. As Dr. Sandeep pointed out, COVID vaccination program is on throughout the country, and there are so many doubts, not only among the general public, even in the medical professionals regarding this vaccination. With the result, hardly 50% of the people, those have been enrolled for the first round, they got vaccinated in last 2 3 days. Even in my hospital, I work in a 430 bedded hospital in Delhi, Northern Railway Central Hospital. Hardly 50% doctors could able to take the vaccination. So with these things in the environment, I think the today's topic is going to be very, very important. And we are lucky to have our guest speaker, Dr. Puneet Chandna, who is a molecular oncologist. And I hope at the end of the session, all of us will be absolutely clear about the doubts and myths about this vaccination. So with these few words, I invite and I welcome Dr. Puneet, as well as I welcome all my participants today's evening program. Thank you so much. Dr.
Thank you.
Sandeep, please.
Yeah, thank you, President sir. So, Dr. Puneet Chandna, for introduction to you, we are joined by our senior members from across India. All are senior leaders from of IUH working in different industries, or they have superannuated, and now they are mentoring all of us. So, today's topic will be the key facts about the COVID-19 vaccine. And as Dr. Gajen Kumar sir told, Dr. Puneet Chandna is our life member of IUS Delhi branch, and he is MD PhD and consultant molecular oncologist, and precise precision medicine, and author and scientist. So he had been a past faculty in Tata Memorial Hospital, Mumbai, and he retains over 2 decades of experience in the bioanalytical sphere. Besides a certified stroke scale specialist from American Heart Association USA, he continues as a professional member at American Heart Association and fellow at National Comprehensive Cancer Network. He is council member and expert consult to many international societies and author to cover clinical 32 publications. He is expert in evaluation, prognosis, and management of symptoms and side effects of several disorders, and trained many institutes to include leading international centers such as Harvard Medical School, UCLA, Ohio State University, and University of Pennsylvania, to name a few, and practice in molecular oncology, precision functional medicine. So, Dr. Chandna sir, as you know that in India we have rolled out two vaccines, Covishield and Covaxin, and in other new vaccines, they shall be shortly, they will be in coming few months, they will be introduced through emergency use authorization. And across the globe, number of vaccines like Pfizer, Moderna, or like Chinese vaccine, Sputnik vaccine, so many vaccines are there.
That's
So
right.
we all have been going through all this literature and data, and we have been attending webinars. Different, they have been developed on different platforms, like mRNA platform or live attenuated vaccines. So regarding safety and efficacy, still lot of queries, lot of questions might be there. So
Sure.
we would like you to address all these questions, so that people, they develop a confidence in our two vaccines. And these vaccines ultimately, their aim, as we were discussing, its name is not to eradicate the COVID-19. It is to control the COVID-19 pandemic in
Very
India.
right. Very rightly said.
Yeah, yeah. So, Dr. Chandna sir, you can share your screen and you can start your presentation, sir.
Thank you very much, everyone, and I welcome everyone, and thanks for letting me be here today and talking about this topic. Initially, you'll see a few slides which are kind of a basic, but it'll not. I'll not go into the depth or the basics of the topic. I think severally people might have already. So it'll just be a slide or two to review, and then we get straight to the point. So allow me with that, and
I would, in the meantime, I would request all the participants to, they can post their questions in the Q&A box, and later on, all the respected panelists, they can also ask questions from Dr. Chandna sir.
all right. I think it'll be better now. So you see, you're able to see my screen
Yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
all right, fair
Yeah.
enough. So, and thanks again, everyone, to the host and of course Dr. Gajendra. And I see Dr. Divyang. I have never met him, but then yeah, thanks for being here, sir. So, all right. So he is an old, I think, a fellow from Mumbai. So, but I never had a chance to meet him. So, thank you, everyone. So, I'd like to begin with the, rather a broad topic on the series 143 for the COVID-19 vaccines facts. So, the facts are all strewn around the places over the web, and we have many people looking at different kind of data. So, at this point in time, when we start and begin with the all right. So if you see bacteriology, at a glance, it's a vast area. I'm not a virologist, but I'm a molecular oncologist now. But then, this was from the 5th May to 2020 slide I've picked up, which we did with IUH, my talk. So it clears off, the classifications could be many for the microbes per se, from the gram positive, and we know gram negative bacteria, mycobacteria, and so on. And when we talk about the DNA viruses or the RNA viruses, coronavirus actually comes and takes its shape onto the 6th and the 7th, starting 2010 and 11 to be precise. And now we are looking at the COVID strain 2, amongst other retroviruses or the togoviruses and so on. So moving ahead on this one, I would say, people are looking at, let's understand the immune system for a second. Here, the immune system is made up of a lot of organs, tissues, cells, and molecules that all work together to generate an immune response, and which can protect us from microorganisms, remove toxins, and destroy even tumor cells for that matter. So I've got some frontier slides at the end which talks about that it's not the DNA and the RNA viruses we're talking about today. We are in fact looking beyond that to use these technologies, and we were happy from a certain community and the super speciality that we have been using the mRNA or the DNA therapeutic or even the vaccinations which we have now, which has begun in several countries, including India. So, so can we can say that the immune system is it's like a military, and we are looking forward to when it is a situation of epidemics or outbreaks, we look at something called as an herd immunity. So I'll not go into the the basics of the herd immunity, but I would just like to bring about that when we get vaccinated, we look at a population where people may be vaccinated or may not be vaccinated. So when we talk about certain past things to fall back upon, like the outbreaks. We talk about measles and the polio. So we felt that, through deductive reasoning, that the polio needed about 80% community or the population to be vaccinated. Measles wanted a little bit more, about a 90%, and coronavirus stands about 80 to 90% again. But then the problem is, in case there are very few people vaccinated, also poses some threats. We'll see a couple of them. Again, about a month or so, around the 20th December, I got together with the ICMR, and we were trying to bring about a publication which keeps on growing, and we are trying to pick up data from SAGE. And the current slide, you can see that IIJMR, and I was speaking with Dr. Sandeep as well before we just started. I had a quick word that about 20 to 30% people, in India already have been affected, and they are contributing to a larger population in terms of we being getting closer to the herd immunity, as we talk about. So I picked up some data from the chart. One you can see is a general chart, and the chart two is from the ex Pfizer company CEO, and who worked with the SAGE, which is a group in the UK. And we talked about, and the third one right here we can see is India, wherein I would say, we are something at about 75 to 80% from a hypothesis, taking care of the and including the data from the sero surveys, that we already might have struck the herd immunity. But all said and done, we still need that. We need to go ahead and build up this officially. So when we talk about the immune system, when we started off, so we are looking for an immune response from whatever processes take place during this episode, from the first infection right up to the herd immunity stage. So the immune response can be studied into as an innate immune response, or I would say an adaptive. Adaptive could take about days to weeks to gain in the body. And but the only major difference is, in the innate response we do not have a memory for the cells inside the body, whereas the adaptive response always provides and generates a memory over a period of time. That may be sometimes short lived, but then it's still is something what the body remembers. Talking about the immunity per se, we can bring about two types of immunities. When we talk about the immune response as adaptive and innate, the immunities could be, also innate immunity and an adaptive immunity. Innate, I would say, is something also talked about as a passive and an active immunity, which is important here at this point in time. I'm just trying to restrict myself to the vaccination at the moment. So a passive immunity could be from a person, we meet, depending on the virus ability to spread, the R numbers and so on. So we could meet people who could spread vaccines, the virus to us. We could have it from, the antibodies made by either animals or even, rats for that matter, or it could be from the cell culture in the laboratories. And when we talk about the passive immunity, we also talk about infants who may be breastfed, and the barriers which the I think the blood barriers which through the placenta are broken and goes to the fetus. So the mother can always transfer the crossover from placenta, the antibodies like the IgG and the IgA. So IgA and the IgG antibodies are very important. And in terms of the frontier applications, we were talking about immunoglobulin therapies are also based on this, which are neurological in nature, and are currently being done, provided and given across the neurological centers who are into the tertiary care. However, the IgG antibodies in the blood, when they cross the placenta, they're not very long lived. They would live, or let's say they are degraded over a period of 6 months. The IgA antibodies are more, and more in numbers, I would say, and they also play an important role in the early childhood. So when we talk about the active immunity now, moving over from the passive immunity, we can talk about, we get it from the vaccination per se. And many times there's a misinformation, which is not equivalent to science. So we need to actually understand the science behind the vaccination to actually draw a conclusion as to where we are and where we are heading to. So broadly, we talk about vaccines are of four types, which is live attenuated, inactivated, subunit, or the polysaccharide vaccines or the toxoid vaccines. So I've just brought it about. The modes of delivery would be intramuscular, intradermal, subcutaneous, and oral. And again, I don't want to go into the base, take it through the fundamentals, but I thought it is important as we tread and build up the warmth around the things. So I've tried to here talk about the vaccines in terms of how do we in fact classify and understand that classification. Live attenuated vaccines usually and the inactivated, they have the whole cell. They are called the whole cell vaccines. So a whole virus or a bacteria is taken to manufacture them or create them. While the subunit and the toxoid, which could be a combination of a subunit or a toxoid, they only contain a part of the pathogen. So you can see the broken ends here, but you can overlap and make a joint one as well. I've got some examples here. When we talk about live attenuated, we could have the MMR, and which is talks about rubella and the varicella as well. Rotavirus, we all know about it. Oral polio vaccine. Then I would quickly go on to the inactivated ones, which is hepatitis A, and a few more like the polio here, which is the inactivated polio one. So nasal flu vaccine, you would say, in live attenuated, would be the next generation vaccines a few companies are working on for COVID. They have their pros and cons, so we have brought about a few of them here. Like I said, the subunit ones could be influenza, or could be HPV, which is cervical cancer vaccine, right? So we are very close to cancer most of the time when it is molecular, or even virology when we are looking at treating people as well. So we have some frontier applications on that also. Talking about the toxoid would be, diphtheria, which is being, and the, I would say, TDAP for the pediatric and the adult doses. So that's how we remember them. Now, as we talked about inactivated vaccines, they may, the immunity may degenerate over a period of time. So, which is why you need some booster shots. Same would be the case in vaccines we currently have. Some people would say it's in a couple of weeks or a couple of months or once in a quarter. Is you must have the second dose to maintain that the load of the immunity we have and keep it afresh, so to say. So hepatitis A, polio, rabies, influenza, all had these. This is nothing new to a COVID-19 vaccine that we may see. And when we, in fact, administer vaccines, it's, the efficacy would be based on the titer. Titer would be the response, the amount of response we get. So from the CD4 helper cells, which we, trigger, it delivers onto generation of certain, cells, and the processes. And we look at interferon gamma, TNF alpha, IL-2, besides other, interleukins. It's the cytokines that are activated and which in turn help the B cells and allow us to fight the vaccines. So before a vaccine it's generally true for all the vaccines. Once we try and establish a protocol for manufacturing, we look at the safety as one of the components and the efficacy on the other hand. Both are as important as the sensitivity and the specificity while we detect a virus. So when we talk about a safety, it should be, we should be able to, it should be cost effective, it should be deployable, it should have logistic ease. And then we talk about efficacies, it should be able to produce a significant immune response of the virus so that, it remains at least before the time we go in phases and try and, vaccinate people, inoculation take, we try and vaccinate them. It should, be that, before the second dose, we should be able to do a couple of them. This is where we started. I have specifically taken up that approval is only for one because a lot of people look at the second Indian manufactured vaccine as a trial based vaccine. So, for the with due respect to those people who have been having questions about the Covaxin, I have taken it as currently, let's say it is not approved. We have 151 which are in the animal testing, which is the initial phase. And then when we got into the humans, it is phase 1, 2, 3. And one of the vaccines here we see is the Sputnik vaccine from Russia. They believed that, and that the phase 2 data was good enough to actually skip the phase 3, and they were trying to do. They are in fact launched it at their end, but then they want to do the phase 3 trials on the way, which is nothing surprising. You'll have some more data from me, which will not be surprising that it can be done or not. It is always a good reasoning behind that. So, when we talk about the race for the viruses about 6 months ago, let's say when we were talking in May last year, so we had a lot of vaccines which were based on an inactivated, weakened, replicating protein subunits. Some were like, the overlaps between the two I was talking about, and there are many of them still underway. So when we talk about the nucleic acid vaccines, there are again many people in the race, right? So we'll talk about the protein-based vaccines, nucleic acid, viral vectors, wherein vectors are kind of products which are made up of DNA in a layman way, and we introduce another synthetic component of a DNA. So we just started about my team started establishing another unit at the Hyderabad facility where we'll be synthesizing DNA, not alone for this, but then it's government funded and would take up on other activities of DNA therapies as well. So which is why I said that it's just started, and in fact, in a way, in the scientific community, it was a blessing that people, we could make them understand, and now it is going for frontier applications as well. So the two vaccines currently we talk about these days is the Pfizer and the Moderna. These are the numbers which are BNTs and so on. They are the candidate numbers which they still have to produce and write each time, while the emergency use authorizations are there for the full approval to come in, and to keep updating that. And so it is just for the tracking sake, they do that. So we have been talking about it is when we how many really the candidates were subject to how many numbers of the targets what we were looking at. So targets, and would be about 43,000 in the case of Pfizer. Moderna had about 30,000, but I would not say, but they covered, but most of the populations here. But I see Asians had been always lower and smaller, when we get to do that. So that's the only thing I feel every time I look for data, every time we go online. So I think the Indian research and the next budget, which is likely to go double, is what we are expecting from the healthcare. So coming back here, so it is the Pfizer and the Moderna, which we are talking about. The other ones which I talk about, BioNTech here, I would still say in the landscape. And Moderna, again, I have kept it here. These are the candidates who would be coming in. Why I've talked about is not approved as of now, because they are not talked about as approved till the time they're in the trial mode. So two of them you see is mRNA, two are inactivated protein subunits we talked about, and viral vectors. So we'll talk about viral vectors also. And this is the cost that is going to be likely there. And all these vaccines have actually, most of them have gone to they're mid first and the second phase. Animal testing 6 months back, which is almost over. Third one, we had the Sputnik from Russia, which has skipped it, but they are continuing to do the trial, including in India. So they go through the animal testing first, then the phase 1, which is about a couple of hundred patients, and then phase 2 is about thousands of patients. And same as for the phase 3 from the cohorts, and before it is finally approved. I've not broken it down so that I thought everyone would know about the phases. So before we move on to something which is molecular, I thought because it is a little bit difficult understanding the DNA languages. So this is something which I use as a dogma for my presentations when I teach the doctors or the tertiary care cancer centers. So we understand that it's like a building wherein, or a house where you have a small office. Office is where the big boss sits and controls, like Dr. Gajendra and Dr. Sandeep Sharma. They would be like the nucleus house for us, the office here, and you have the cell which houses the DNA, and then you have proteins workshops and centers which are helping you There's a cell membrane would be the walls and so on. So this is just to give you a concept that this is where the CEO is, and this is where we have the genes and which are coded with the the replicating regions or the sequences which help us make proteins to perform functions. So this is how our DNA would look. It is a double stranded helical structure. It has four components. That is ATGC. That's the way to call it usually. So A will pair with T and G with C. And there is something called the U, which comes in only when it is in RNA. So it is a X-based structure, which again we are defying now. Some recent studies says that it doesn't look like an X shape, as we see in certain chromosomal, investigations by gynecologists. So it doesn't look like an X shape anymore. But then still more data is to come. So it is rolled on to something called as the with the chromatin fibers, and this is how the structure is. We're not going deep into that. The idea was to let you know that the DNA has got four components. So each color has four component here, and it's got a code for a protein. So when a DNA code actually it translates itself, means imagine it's a book, we start reading it, so it's a transcription, and when we close it, something comes out, so which is a protein. So it's a translation that's happened. So in this case, we are reading the sequence through the processes, these automated processes, and mRNA comes out, which takes the message across. Imagine it's like the older days horse based messengers. So he has picked up from the king something which is a DNA code or a transcript, and goes and gives it across to somebody as a protein. So that is what so DNA codes for mRNA, and mRNA is a messenger. It is like a horse carrying the message, and it transfers a protein when it reaches there. A cloning is a process wherein you see the green area of it's a circular piece of DNA wherein I can put in my magenta DNA or any other kind of DNA. That is called cloning. It's very simple like that. It could come from viruses and so on. So imagine is like we have our DNA, you have a plasmid DNA, which again is made up of four things, four different components, and it can be worn and given it to the body. So we cut it. This is a process. We cut it using some chemicals, and these chemicals allow us to open it at a specific place, and then we incorporate our DNA inside. So this is, imagine this is something like a transcript or a part of the DNA from the microbes, because each living thing has its own DNA, genomic DNA. So like humans have their own human DNA, the viruses have their viral DNA. Mitochondria has DNA is called as mitochondrial DNA, and so is for the species. So every living thing like the microbes, viral DNA or the bacterial DNA can be component can be taken and put inside. That's what is being done to create those vaccines, right? So this is a picture depicting. I would not take much time on this. So this is just a refresher. Genes have a code. They give it to the messenger, which is like a horse called as the mRNA, takes it and forms proteins. This is just a replication of that one. Now, when we are making vaccines, we have made it very well, but then, we see a lot of contraindications there in terms of, this is not something which is only for COVID. This has come in about decades of the virology and the vaccination we have seen. So generally people talk about GBS, Guillain-Barre syndrome, which is more of a I would say myalgia. Sorry, please go ahead. Sorry, somebody wants to speak, I guess.
No, no, you can continue.
All right, sorry. No problems. So, usually the viruses or the vaccines are made and the cells are grown inside the chicken cells, right? So individuals with allergy to eggs or something and certain specific proteins, they feel, it could be moderate to a severe one. So one would really keep them away from vaccinating and the GBS, which is, they might be on steroids usually. So what to expect after before, during, and after vaccination is before is one, see that do you fall under the category, the eligibility for that. So there are many things which are coming out. We have now the the data sheets now from the companies, and during the vaccination as well, and post. So I would get into this, but before that, when we talk about vaccines and try to comment on that, I believe that this is what we need to go back. Even the doctors who have not got vaccinated themselves. So where are we heading? So these are certain things. Quo vadis is something what we studied back in the medical school, or primum non nocere, which is first do not do any harm, and don't take anybody's word for it. A word for it comes from the Royal Physicians College in UK, where I actually did my PhD, but not at the. I was not fortunate enough to do that. We even talk about the logos of our thing. So that's a staff. So in fact, the one on the right, you'll be amazed. We are so ignorant at times that I also had to see it post several years of my practice, that whatever logo we are using is actually the staff of Hermes, which is in magenta or a red color here, and what exactly is the Asclepius rod is actually the symbol for the medicine, right? So don't take anybody's word for it. I think the data we have talks about, and it is sound enough to talk about in favor of vaccines, and one should know about and it talks about definitely about the side effects, or the toxicities we may be talking about in future. So when we talk about common side effects could be fever, headache, muscle aches, and so on, this depicts it much better. I've tried to make some slides which is more animated. That's the trend these days. So when we go intramuscular, intradermal, or subcutaneous injections, pain, swelling, and redness on the injection side. Then we have systemic side effects, which could be malaise, fever, headache. Some people say palpitation. I would say it's anxiety, unless there is a condition which is low lying. Some very rare serious reactions, which is 1 in 100,000 or 1 in 1 million, would be something more redness, which is the area which is about 7.77 centimeters plus on the side. Fever, which is very high. But then at the end, the benefits outweigh the risks we are talking about today, right? Some people are also talking about that it could invade. We know that SARS-CoV can invade the brain, and cause certain things into the central nervous system, which of course is linked with the sense of smell and taste, which is more prominent in as one of the symptoms we were talking about regularly a few months back. But nowadays, unless you have multiple sclerosis, which is an underlying condition, I don't think it is something to worry about. Controversies were there since early 90s for vaccines. It's not something new. They were talked about, thimerosal was something which is in fact mercury based compounds. Till about 2001, the American government then, though it doesn't cause anything, because mercury has two kinds of products or compounds, you may say. So the ones which are used in vaccines are not thimerosal. In fact, does not cause a toxicity, but in 2001 it was got written off. So when we talk about from logo to something written off, it's based on a populistic approach. So I think it is a lot of responsibility we medical professional have, right from doctors to super speciality to even residents, that they talk and in favor of the community, herd community, to set in and talk in favor of the vaccines, so to say, to derive the herd immunity. When we talk about the special deliveries and talk about specifically the mRNA vaccines, so there's a part of the DNA we take, put it into two fatty tissues through the ribosomes, and we which will create a protein, like I said. The horse bearing the rider with the message called as the messenger RNA goes all through and makes a protein. In this case, it makes a spike protein. So I've picked up these two things which were important and being talked about even today in the morning. Whenever I get a chance, I or scroll through my phone, I see a lot of things happening. Covaxin has this, Covishield, this happened, that happened, right? So let's talk about. They have been talking about something which is, I heard a few cardiologists also speaking about that. The platelets or blood thinners like the aspirin, ticagrelor, uh, clopidogrel. Clopidogrel is something which I was working with in AIMS in 2010, and we published an article, where of course we have Dr. Balram Bhargav also a part, that the before a drug came in ticagrelor, so it is more of a big pharma that has been fighting certain things. So there are other, we must agree, there are other forces which are forcing us to think otherwise. So if you have a blood thinner, which is like a clopidogrel, so it is a time and tested drug which is goes at 75 mg once a day. And initially, the loading dose after a PCI may be high, but then people have been taking it for, I think, as I remember, is 35 years. And but then they had to kill it because it was going out in 2010 out of the patents. So they wanted to bring in something called a sticagrel or prasugrel. A lot of people who are into cardiology here would agree with me that it is still given as a combination dose with aspirin. So I don't see any thing happening to those people even in the loading dose, unless there are very few people, 1 in 10,000, who may have a thrombosis and things like that. So but then they have been talking about, so it actually means there could be an underlying bleeding disorder. It does not mean people who have got stented have gone undergone a angioplasty, or they have had a recent heart attack or something like that. So it is a blood thinner they may be having for a specific serious underlying condition, wherein it may not. And like I said, it could be for the neurological disorders. It could be multiple sclerosis, which I don't see rampant, and a person would just walk in about 2 days before an attack of an acute response by the underlying condition called as multiple sclerosis, walking up to take a jab. I don't see many people like that. So when we are talking about tenderness, pain, and all, we have all covered. These are all flu-like symptoms. 1 in 100. They have to talk about 1 in 10, 1 in 100, which means like 1 in 10 is 10%, or something like about 1%. It looks higher because the numbers what we have looked upon today is less. So this will go. This will diminish over a period of time. Like we had initially, out of so many tested, so many people were there. So likewise, the mortality rate was very high initially, then it came down. So I think this is all the numbers and how do we look at the data. And people have been talking about, this is a very important slide. I felt this is straight from the FDA. Straight from the FDA. And it is not that Covaxin with the ICMR and a company in Hyderabad or could be anywhere in the world has got a approval and we have done something. We have, hastened up the process. The FDA acknowledges and allows, I must use the word acknowledges and also allows approving a vaccine during the trial. So this is from the October 2020. So this is what I have highlighted here. Issuance of the emergency use authorization for the vaccine would not interfere. That's about with certain riders and conditions. So this is the first page snapshot I have taken. So it's nothing that we have gone fast, or people back in the US who are only driven by the commercial background of that particular drug or a vaccine or something like that. So it is a process allowed and acknowledged by FDA itself. We had a controversy coming in a couple of days, I would say, back. And when I think an Indian based ICMR, ex ICMR, a chief scientist now at WHO, said that, maybe we may not have a herd immunity. Then people said, at one point in time, we are talking about herd immunity, and almost struck in, or it's not required. People got easy when the lockdown was eased, and you'd find very few people actually following distancing norms and so on. But then and then we have a vaccine, but it will not come in, will not strike a herd immunity. So what is it? So is it that we are talking about something which is the I think it is not a universal remedy. It is only like Dr. Sandeep also commented, is we are trying to bring down the disease, the effect of the disease. We are not trying to eradicate it at the moment. So when we are talking about two vaccines, yes. So it may be because it has to go in phases, and we have controversies, we have a lot of things. So all would should get together and see what is good and bad, and don't take anybody's word for it. Look at what is happening, and uh, be more look at the legitimate data. And here I call in as a deductive reasoning. When we say why a herd immunity and post vaccination, what should happen? So the three parameters I could bring about together were very important. A lot of people think, if I have the antibodies, nothing is found, then it does not mean I was infected. You might not be able to pick it up on an RT-PCR. That's what it means. The other one would be that, if I have the antibodies, I am immune. So the immunity may not last more than 3 months or something. So I see about at least now it is a little bit gone down. But then I saw a lot of IgG and IgM tests which came in, and uh, I would say 50 a day. And most of them felt, oh, I'm okay now. So I said, but you have to follow, right? The norms and so on. So there's nothing called as a black and white either. When it is protective antibodies, there's nothing black and white. So even if the vaccine is successful, one has to look at, it doesn't guarantee an immunity. So over a period of time is what we should look at. It's not like overnight we will strike something. I hope you, all the eminent fellow members here would agree with me. So to summarize on the how many researches and how many animal testings have been done, it is about 151 already as on day that we speak, and it is the same process from the polio vaccine to a COVID vaccine. A similar process has been followed. It's nothing that it's come out, but then the techniques, the mRNA, the new molecular processes, and science allows us to make it faster. It is also that. So it goes up to the all the way from phase 1 to 3 to approval. And like I said, in the opening line, that we may have newer versions of these. So we'll incorporate. We will have nasal vaccines people are working on, and we have to look at the efficacy and talk about those in times to come. But it doesn't mean that the vaccine is of no use. There might be efficacy changes between 70%, 90% in the first dose, after second dose. So it is more of a cumulative. I think we should leave the regulatory to the regulatory authorities. We should leave the decision for getting vaccinated to our clinicians, and promote the same with our practices, either in the hospitals, private clinics, and so on. And likewise, also educate people that it is not you to decide. When you have come to me, you have come with all the things to me that I'll not do any harm to you, and that's the oath I have taken. And that's the kind of thing that really works, because I think given a lot of distress people have, so it is more of the words which count when it is in the OPD as well. So when we talk about here in this production, so there were challenges when we talk about, see, nothing is absolute. So we have DNA and RNA also having challenges. In this slide, I have brought about, inactivated, attenuated whole virus vaccines. They're made in, so there might be, reasons why people, there might be religious concerns. But then do I see any non-animal fat capsule in the whole pharmacy I am exposed to every day, or something which I am having as a pill every day, morning and evening? So daily people are having, so a lot of people are talking about chicken eggs and so on, but it doesn't mean that it is going to hurt the sentiments. So I think people are talking about posing these pose danger and animal protein and stuff like that. So which is a myth, I would say. The second myth is but then also a controversy, or a I would say a shortcoming sometimes associated with the vaccines which are DNA or RNA based, is that we are protein vaccines. We have we generate antibodies, but usually their response is not that robust. So these are done in vectors, like we have seen about. So we take a vector, which is nothing but a piece of DNA, we cut it and put in our component of DNA what we want. Then we have the viral vectors as gene-based vaccines, right? So when we have the viral vectors, so there are DNA vectors, so we have RNA vectors also. So when we are talking about those, So there are publications which I have mentioned here and reference to below, is that we have a certain times when we are using certain vectors, they work better on certain organisms. So when I introduce something like a vector into a hamster, it may or a rat, it may behave differently. It may not make so many copies, or trigger my T cell immune system, which will help the B cell, let's put it this way. But then at the same time, you would be happy to know that something that works as a vector in a rat, which is twice, two times, it'll replicate twice, and may not be a good starting molecule for making a vaccine. It may, if you use it on hamsters, it works 500 times, and believe me, when it gets to humans, it is 10,000 times. So something that has worked in rats, in fact, will work 10,000 times better when it gets to human, and it will replicate. But at the same time, when it replicates, we have to see that it should not have anything which is a contaminant, because that may also replicate together with that. And many times when we are replicating inside using a vaccine by mRNA insertions, there are certain RNAs which are thrown out of the cells on the receptors outside. Some would get in, some are out. The ones which are out may also replicate with that same speed of 10,000 times, right? So that may have a retrograde transport. And olfactory bulbs, and have been seen to cause Bell palsy. That's another neuro disorder one may talk about, but that is very, very rare. I have not seen one. Why I have not seen one? It's not that I was not working on the vaccine, but I have been working on something called as a chimeric antigen receptor T cell therapy, which we are using for cancers, which will come in my last slide, I guess. We are getting to the near, I'm sorry, to keep you hold. So, but then when we talk about the viral vectors or the gene vaccines, see, there is something called as the insertional mutagenesis and the systemic inflammation we talk about. But they are mainly on the DNA vaccines, but they're more stable than the RNA. So we have the viral vectors, which are RNA in the red, and the green ones, or the teal color, if I have to say here, are the DNA vaccines, right? So when you have a production of these DNA antibodies and immune reactions, there might be a few reactions, but they are not life threatening. And they are very rare, only in case when there are contaminants, or, they cross over into a reproductive system, which does not generally happen. That is why we will not be vaccinating, potential mothers or pregnant females, right? Expectants and potentials, right? That's how I call them. So we are keeping them away so that it doesn't get into the from the mother to the child as well, because this has got a potential, which of course even certain other vaccines we were talking about, the IgA and IgG antibodies can cross the placenta barrier. If somebody can something can cross the blood brain barrier, it can cross the the placenta barrier, and we should be available. It is not that either of one happens, the other is bound to happen. I don't mean that. I mean to say is, if it is aggressive enough to, and the biochemistry allows it to transfer over to the other side, we have taken care of that, and they're not the candidates. The frontier applications we were talking about. So we have been using mRNA. People say that we mean just about 6 to 8 months that we got a vaccine. But I go back now with my UPenn colleagues there in Pennsylvania, in Perelman School of Medicine. We have been working now for almost 6 years for something which is called as we are into the fourth generation here of that particular therapy based on, it is called as chimera. Itrisanlanguryl is the tongue twisting word here, but it's also the world's costliest drug per dose. It is $470,000 per patient per dose that the FDA pays in United States for certain liquid cancers. And this is based on the, I would say, viral and molecular combinations, which means DNA and viruses. So we take out the T cells from, and this is a mature application, is already FDA approved. We're just trying, vicious luck, we are trying to bring this down to about $20,000 in India. the trials are on. So we have been working on this. My team has been working rather, and few specialists from the various hospitals in Bengaluru and Mumbai and Pune as well. So we have been working on this. We'll bring it down to, that's what our thing is, expectations are. It'll get it down to 20,000. But wherever it works, people come, sometimes people come to me and ask, dear doctor, what kind of side effects? I said 100%. The moment we spurt it back in, we grow your cells, we'll take the T cells, we'll load it with a virus. It is not the complete virus, it is a component of the virus, which will be activated, grown into trillions of cells. We'll take a few thousand, make it trillions of them over a period of 18 days, and then we'll infuse it in. And if it works, you're cured of cancer. So that is the kind of potential. If it is done the right way, I think sky is the limit. So, and the learning to live and living to learn, I must, give it back to the IOH. That's what I learned here. I thought that should be the last line. And I'm sorry, been speaking at a breath. So, that's all for my side at the moment. And look forward to questions, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Puneet. You have given a very elaborative discussion about this COVID-19 vaccine, especially what are the platforms on which it has been manufactured and what are the different type of vaccines. And there are certain questions from our learned participants. So you can access your Q&A box. There is one question from
Right.
our
Yeah.
senior member from Mumbai, Dr. Damodar Lele.
Lily.
That,
So, yeah.
since COVID-19 virus is losing its virulence and transmissibility, people are not following precautions. Even then, morbidity and mortality figures are down across the country. Is vaccine necessary at all?
Right. So, like I showed in my slide, if I look at the Sero survey and the IIJMR, this is a very important question Dr. Lele has put up. So, if I look at certain data which is coming in, the herd immunity might have already set in, but we don't have the data. The other aspect would be that the data which is there is not complete, or the data has been collected only from certain pockets. So if we talk about that, there are about 29 states, and I go to only 9 of them and bring about that data, does not mean the whole country is, immune. Likewise, if I see rural pockets, class B cities, or, they are the people who have not actually started coming over. They dispersed and went back. If I talk about even the lower class, from one hypothesis, they have gone back, but they have not come back in. So they might come back in, and if they don't find a good immunity that has set in, they will be the first ones to get infected this time, and maybe we'll see a second or the third phase. So which came first, an egg or a hen, is the question here. I would say when we have these kind of questions, it is better to get vaccinated than to wait and wait to have another wave or another problem or a mutation or something like that. So I would say, when people are not doing it, it is only the awareness. When we are talking about the transmissibility and, the virulence is decreasing. So it is decreasing is fine, but then, it is not ended. The word ended is something which I think we have to emphasize upon. So people are really feeling that it is ended. The day the vaccination has been announced, it's fine done. I even came across a patient of mine who came back and said, dear doctor, once you get vaccinated, I will not have a problem, right? So I said, why? So he believed that it is the doctors who are in fact spreading more. So that came up from somewhere. So I thought, so I think it is better when you don't know anything which is down to the last generation. So many times, like, let's say, when you're looking at a bronchoscopy, if we don't have the fourth generation or the latest bronchoscopy which is navigational and can take me to the third generation or the fourth generation of the to the alveoli, and have a that kind of visuals on the bronchoscopy, better is to still we go ahead and treat empirically, or even at times which is in anticipation. So let's say this is not a treatment, this is just a prevention. So prevention is always going to be. But then, if I talk about the scientific numbers also, I'll not extend this answer. But if I talk about scientific numbers, allow me to end it with a statement that whenever we are doing screening or vaccination, it is with the intent at the end that how many lives are we going to save. So I'm sure that the lives we are going to save, in spite of somebody's perception or a data which is part or partial, that we may not need it. It is better because at the end we will save so many lives per thousand people or 100,000 people. That's how we look at. So I'm sure with the data which is in the US, currently India, we are working on, but I don't know how actively I'll be a part of that. So another group from Pune is doing that, NIV. So they would come out with the data very soon that in case we vaccinate about 100,000 people, how many lives we'll be able to save. So human lives save. I think even for a research project, if you are able to save 10 lives for 100,000 people, that's a project readily funded without any questions for a screening. So I'm sure here will be something like thousands of them in case, we are looking at a population of 1.3 billion. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah,
So,
actually, Dr. Chandna, we should not have any anxiety about this vaccine. Whenever it is accessible to every one of us, we should go for it, because this will reduce our risk for getting infection, and second, it will reduce the transmissibility also. So it will reduce the transmission. That is important for us, for the society also. So
right,
this is a societal obligation for every one of us.
right.
So there is one another question from Mr. DLN Reddy, Dr. DLN Reddy. Why are the medical profession in the country taking on the effectiveness of our vaccines? It's the time for medical associations lead from the front in making this program as a success, especially IUH should stream the vaccine to all its members.
All right. Yeah. So I think IOH has already taken a larger step today and in the past as well. And I'm sure there'll be many people who will be talking about vaccinations and stuff like that, even after we end this talk today. So IOH has been always instrumental, and the I would say the catalyst to the reforms, and the updations, CMEs, and of course vaccination. And this has been, I remember 5th May, I was looking back as the talk I had given, and since that day, I have not seen anybody resting, even on a Saturday or even midweek, that it is being done. But then, when we talk about vaccinations, I already had my vaccination. And so that was at Safdarjung Hospital. So I am visiting faculty there in the gynae onc department. So a lot of ladies had that apprehension. So there was a man to lead it. So I felt, there we are only very few men into that gynec oncology, center. So I don't think I have a problem. I don't feel it, like you have asked me. So I feel that it is now there. And we have the leads like Dr. Randeep Guleria and people who have done that. So it is more of, if you go, if you see that, I sometimes in a humorous way, go back to about a year and a half in my practice. So, I was with one of the cardiologists, and, I was just there for a project we had to run in selection of patients. So before, there was a myth that the stents are, being put without proper diagnosis to people. But then when it is somebody, I agree with you, Dr. Reddy, that somebody like Narayan Hrudayalaya chief says that, we need it or we don't need it, we listen to them. So likewise, we'll listen to them in case they lead it from the front. And I'm sure Dr. Tyagarajan is leading, many places. Of course, Dr. Sandeep is leading. Dr. Gajendra Kumar is having a 480 bed. So I'm sure at least there'll be about a 2,000 OPDs every day. So I'm sure he's leading it from the front. There's nothing that IOH is not doing, but of course we'll have more suggestions. But I go back to that practice day before the Aadhaar card kind of cards came in, like Ayushman Bharat, right? So I saw this guy was on a PCI, and was going in for angiography. So the patient came back and said, "Doctor साहब, अगर गवर्नमेंट लगा रहा है तो दो लगा के अच्छा से काम कर दीजिए." So that's another, way to look at it. So people would say, if it is one I have to pay, then it's costly. But if it is a government, so two are good enough. So I think it is a perception what people, we have to break that ice, what people have myths. So I've tried to break them here. But then, of course, I'm free to take up more, one-on-one, things also, if it helps with the patients also. I do it every day in my OPD. And now I have more, thanks to IOH, more data, which is now consolidated so it can be presented many other places. So I wish it answers that
Yeah.
question. And I
Now,
over to
may I request our respected panelists to, if they have any questions or comments, they can, yeah.
I have got a question.
sure.
Uh,
So,
so I
Dr.
have got
Bobby, sorry,
hello.
Dr. Gajendra, Dr. Bobby here. Can I ask?
Yeah,
Sir,
please go
Dr.
ahead.
Gajen
He's
is
asking, yeah, you
asking,
can go for the next one.
Yeah.
Dr. Bobby, you can
See,
give
I
an.
have got two questions rather. My first
Please.
question is, whenever there is a vaccination, there is a lot of demand. And I have seen at the time of introduction of hepatitis B vaccination, people were ready to pay, and in the schools there were camps, and the students were asked to deposit some amount, and everybody was willing to spend money and take the vaccination. Unfortunately,
आधा आधा पौना घंटे लगेगा.
unfortunately, this time, this whole issue has been politicized
I agree. Yes.
into the public, not as per the scientific wish. And because now, as you are telling, all medical top fraternity is leading. But the question is, why the political masters are not leading? That is the reason that in this particular case, there is a lot of hodgepodge. And I am really sorry to say that in my hospital, even 50% of the medical professionals, they have refused to take the medicine, this vaccine.
Right.
So I think we could have been waited still more and let the clinical phase trial 3 should have been over in the case of Covaxin at least, and then it should have been introduced.
Right.
Because don't you feel that there was a hurry to introduce the vaccine?
I would say there was, to a certain extent, I agree with you that there was a hurry. But then, given the stage and the state of affairs in India, of course, it's politically driven to a certain extent. I do not deny that. And that they had to quickly look at the way, and like I was showing you, the FDA, that during the trials, can it be approved or not? And then the other controversy came in also, that I think people who are heading, I run two companies, one is in the US and one is in India, for technology and the frontier applications. So I'm referring to that as the heads of the institutions which are private industry should also look at that there is a lot of not only for the let's say the for the society, which they have to spend money as a corporate social responsibility, but otherwise also medically or pharma driven companies have in fact to look at, come out. And I think it was not presented in the right way from one of our colleagues, who is a researcher from Hyderabad, to come out. And it was a little bit too aggressive, too late, too unprofessional to do that in a way that we are this, we are that, and because when you talk about the data, and data talk about numbers, and numbers can transform and make you understand a few things, rather than jumping to a conclusion. I am the CEO of so and so. I know the best. Nobody can challenge me. So I think, and given the whole, it was fueled by something called as the digital media as well. So there are groups who are getting together to defy every event. So something which is, like I said, DATPs or something, pertussis or something, I have to be very scared about and be very careful with my patient. You never know in the trial which is still on who got the placebo. So it is a double blind trial. Likewise, I think it may be a hurry. It sounded like a hurry
Yeah.
because we were not working together. How many people would really sit into the reverse times? I see many people, into international community these days. So we hardly sleep these days. I have to sometimes personally wake up and, till about 2 a.m. I have to do certain TCons, discuss data with some of my colleagues who are back in the US or some other places which are in reverse time zones. So we India has to stand up to demand those that respect, and we collectively have to bring about that we are good scientific and clinical community who can achieve, even by replicating or cloning a particular process which may be there in the Western world, effectively, or if not much better. So
And
I
my
think
second
that's all
question,
put together. You're right that which came out as a final thing as that it was a bit early. And a lot of I see neurologists, or even cardiac experts, or cardiologists, or let me say interventional cardiologists, are not very clear when it talks about blood thinner. I think everything came up in 3 days post the vaccination was launched. I see a co-vaccine thing coming in, then Serum Institute giving their own fact and data sheet, and it's hurriedly mentioned, right? If and buts and a comma, they should have been talked about well before launching. I think they were making it, and for last so many months. So when somebody else could do it back in the US or some other Western country, why we delayed to launch it, right? And why are we getting offended if people are asking questions? So I think all put together, it gives a different feel to the. It is sad for the whole community altogether. It is not only those pharma companies that I'm sure you must be facing a lot of resistance also at times from across the peers, that oh, this is it, or maybe I'm doing it for my personal whims and fancies, right? If not for anything else. So I agree with you, it was a bit hurried, to so to say, and could have been done much more better in a professional manner.
and then my second question is,
Sure.
somebody already had a COVID-19 episode,
Yep.
he has recovered, then
Yep.
why he need a vaccine?
Right. So very rightly said. So I don't know if it was very faster in talking in my one of my slides. So I had talked about that. It may not be that we are having an antibody and have a test. So it may traditionally not last more than, specifically not more than 3 months. So if I was detected positive and I have a 21 days post infection, a report which is with an antibody developed and positive through the life cycle, it may not stand beyond February, and I can be reinfected.
Fine. Thank you.
There have been cases for reinfection also right now.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you.
So that is the three myths I think I was talking about. I'll just.
Dr. Bobby Joseph, he's Professor of Community Medicine from St. John's, Bangalore. Sir.
Yes. Yeah. Dr. Joseph, please. Sorry
Yeah,
to keep
thank
you
you,
waiting.
Dr. No problem at all. Thank you, Dr. Sharma. Thank you, Dr. Chandra. I put that in the chat box actually. There's a lot of questions being asked about the role of alcohol post vaccination. I'm talking about vaccination in general, and to be specific about COVID-19 as well. What would your recommendations be with regards to not the abuse of alcohol, but the use of alcohol post vaccination?
I would say alcohol may cause only in case a patient. Let me put it way. We never say in our, we never say that ever in our, practice or guidelines for ages, that we never say don't drink. We say drink in moderation, right? So we talk about moderation. Even American Heart Association says there are controversies around it, but I think it is got specifically one should not be drinking is something very specific, because it gives rise to certain, let's say angiotensins, and the ACE inhibitors we are talking about actually contribute to you having a lesser risk. But the ACE2, which is I would say an aftermath of alcohol, would definitely cause I would rate it to cardiovascular in terms of the pathway, renin angiotensin receptor pathway, if I am want to put it as one go. So one should
Okay.
avoid.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Does it answer your question? The RAS
Yes,
system,
I think so. Yes. 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 Thank you.
it
Thank
could
you.
be a GERD, it could be a hypertension, which is acute and cause
Yeah.
palpitations and a stroke.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Uh, Dr. Shyam Pingle, sir. Dr. Shyam Pingle is our board member from International Commission on Occupational Health from IIPH Gandhinagar. Yeah, Dr. Pingle, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Chandna. It was a excellent presentation, and he made very complicated things appear very simple. And I'm sure a lot of technical information was also shared with us, and I thank him for that.
Thank you very much, sir.
And there has been a good discussion, and it has been pointed out by one of the attendees as well as by the faculty itself, that there has been a lot of misconceptions and loose talk about the vaccine, as our president said, by the politicians and also on the media, digital media. One of the examples which I want to mention here with names is, yesterday I happened to hear a piece titled ex-AIM's director says vaccine was rushed and it should have been delayed by 1 month or whatever. It was by Current Thapar. And when I read the whole interview, which lasted more than half an hour, it was all about saying that vaccines are good, reliable, safe, and we should take them. But it was titled in such a way that people will say, oh, vaccine should not be taken because it has been rushed. So I think it is really playing to the gallery and misleading people. So we as doctors have to see through it. And the contents of the talk itself is very clear. It was Dr. Mishra. And he was very clear, he was very insistent, and he was very consistent about what he was saying. There was no doubt about that. But people don't listen to it for half an hour. No? They only see the title and they go away. So probably that's a sad thing which is happening in our country. But as IOH as well as doctors, we have to lead it. We have to lead people to a clear path, to a clear thinking, and support the vaccine movement. WHO has also come out very strongly about vaccine hesitancy. But this is something, of course, politics and whatever, we need not go into it, but there are various reasons for that. We need not go into it. Right. But as technical people, as scientific people, it is our duty to support. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Rightly said, sir, because, sometimes there is something called as a clairvoyance. So the more you are educated, the type of setting you are practicing in also drives a certain behaviors in the clinical setup for professionals. I'm sure some would agree, if not all, that if I am a tertiary or a super specialty doctor, I look forward to diagnose more and find something in every patient. But it is the rarest chance. It may be a rarest chance because the rarest things are rare and may land up in my clinic. So also we should be mindful about that. So I think, when I look into, I can talk about, because I lived with the DNA now for almost since 2003. I've lived and, created technologies. I've published severally across schizophrenia, cancers, and even, obesity and so on. And we are talking about depression these days. So you won't believe me that, FDA has got marker, which I check in your blood and can say that you have a depression, right? So, and if I go back 15 years, we never thought DNA would do anything. But now few cancers like lung cancer, colorectal, breast cancers, and ovarian cannot begin their treatment if we don't have a molecular pathway. So nothing may be everything. There may not be a single product or a technique that may be, we swap between MRIs, CT scan, contrasts, and even, sometimes even, cancers like teratomas can be diagnosed only with a blood test. We don't have to with an X-ray and a blood test. When I would say don't do a biopsy, people would look at me. An oncologist saying not a biopsy because it's not required. The size is big and so on. Likewise, I think like Dr. Pingle said, there are people who would overdo it, or when we are not in position or in power, we behave differently. But at the same time, in case it is not, I think there are thousands who have been vaccinated. It was so potent killer. I think we should have had beds lined.
So, two panelists, they have raised hands. Dr. Rajiv Kumar Jain, our Senior Vice President. And
yes, sir, Dr. Jain.
Yeah, Dr. Puneet, I must compliment you for a very clear, concise, and a very educative brief on the vaccines for COVID.
Sure.
One thought or comment, you may say, has come to my mind. while listening to you. This The financing of the vaccine will sooner or later will be an issue, because ultimately somebody has to bear the cost of the vaccine, directly or indirectly. Directly, as you were mentioning about CSR funds, industries, and indirectly through taxation system or assess, which may be coming in the budget on 1st February, which will be indirect method of financing COVID vaccination. Nothing in the world comes free. Even the research for the vaccine never comes free, and the cost of uh, building up the vaccine, whether it is ICMR or Serum Institute of India or Oxford University, somebody has to bear the cost sooner or later.
Right.
Whether CSI will be allowed to recover the cost later or by sale to corporates, the cost will be an issue. Now, we also could understand through your presentation that this vaccine is for primarily public health good, not in so much as an individual good. That means the individual who takes a decision to go for vaccine will be taking a decision for the public good, for the common good, not so much for the individual good.
Rightly said. Yeah.
If that is so, uh, won't you feel that ICMR and government and the state government should be more forthright in presenting the data about herd immunity? Because as you know, ICMR has been conducting serial surveys to know the status, so that we know clearly geographically as to where the herd immunity has come. Because the question in the pandemic in India at the moment, everybody says, what has led to this sudden decline, even in winter, while science was saying, all the scientists were saying, including government and ICMR was saying, there's likely to be an acute upsurge of the infection.
Yeah.
And what has happened? Only in the so-called higher temperature regions of the country, currently Kerala and Maharashtra, and to some extent Karnataka, the infection is on a higher side, while on the colder part of India, it is on the lower side. And we are the conviction for administering vaccine for common good becomes weaker, because the government has not prepared presented the herd immunity data through mass scale surveillance. That is still in the pipeline. So the people who need to have very scientific, strong base for behaving for public good are not behaving, because they feel I do not have the data. Why? What is happening? 0.32% positivity rate with 75,000 tests a day in Delhi. Who would believe that in the height of winter, it'd be 0.32% positivity rate with 75,000, which is higher than US testing rates?
Right.
So this vaccine hesitancy, which everybody is telling, and you also mentioned, it is not a pure vaccine hesitancy just because they are hesitant about taking a vaccine. It's much more complex than it's presented to be.
Right.
So, what would be your comments on this linkage of the pandemic situation in India epidemiologically
Yeah.
and the vaccine introduction, maybe in a slower phase or in a very fast phase, in a very localized community of, say, healthcare workers?
Right. Very valid question. I'll attempt to answer, though it's difficult, but I think it has to be answered. It could be answered understanding the presidential, democracy, which is in the United States or most of the Western world, and the ones which we have come up and headed suddenly as a country. So it is not the states which have made a country, but we made a country first and then we had the states. So I think, driven from that particular point, I think the head of the states we have, and the general, expectations of Indians are totally geographically different than the rest of the world. Similarly, the thought process and the hierarchies we have in the society are different, and hence each group, if I have to isolate them into a different community or populations of India, if I have to talk about, right, peoples of India, not the people of India, peoples as in proper noun of India, peoples of India. We have to have a different strategy at each level, and each to be driven by like-minded, aggressive, wise, and bureaucrats at the same time, the head of institutions, which are doctors, and who could guide, first understand by themselves and guide their particular setup and the clinical setting they are in a specific way, which is received, and you see it being accepted in a right manner, without, see, there'll be controversies everywhere, but at the same time, I think there are too many forces working together. When we have uh, I'm sure people would agree that there is a difference. eh, if you don't go to it's not just by an anatomy class in prof 1 that I may be good enough to perform a surgery anywhere, but from the similar standpoint, gynecologists who are actually kind of performing surgeries every day, or gyneops, are not actually called surgeons. Whereas we have another group in the, I would use this word as quackademics. People have been performing surgeries in conventional, traditional medicine of India, and have stood up as against the surgeons who have given in 7 to 10 years of dedicated training under the knife. And so similar way, we have to tackle each population to be segregated on the basis of their wisdom, their ability to understand. And similarly, I think, reading between the lines, I think the uh, our first man of the country was clear enough that the first phase would be taken up by the central government. I think, which I envision, is the second phase would be taken to the states, and something what we have left at the central level could very well be taken up by the states in a better way with the data. Of course, yes, data would be making sense to people who would really understand their data and the way we put across the data. I think when we're trying to play with words like, uh, uh, let's say, there are few words, as an oncologist, I feel should be taken away. That it should be a person is having cancer or not having cancer now, post the first line treatment or a second one. But when we talk about certain things like, disease free survival, overall survival, and stuff with people who are not, familiar at all with those words, it would be plain and simple to say, currently you don't have a disease, but it may come back. So we have to go into surveillance and we have to monitor you repeatedly over a period of time. But if I go and tell this thing that, you are cancer free temporarily or permanently, is something which is an everyday problem in my practice. So people come and you say that doctor said, I'm cancer free now, but why it is coming back? I said, so cancer free at that point in time, right? But you have to undergo certain things, it may come back, or there be a metastasis. So I think it should be dealt with the different wisdom at different levels of literacy, if I may use that word with your allowance. But it can be handled, nothing is lost, and doing it at with aggressiveness is going to work. Otherwise the whole thing is going to die down, and we will never see it coming back again, that we will plan again and do something. Because the more you delay, I think Indian psyche is such that we lose the sense of the actual problem. I hope it answers that.
Right, right. So there are two more raised hands from our panelists, Dr. Shashikala from Bangalore and Dr. Divyangsha. Dr. Shashikala first. Let us have short answers and short questions.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, because it's
They were
already.
good questions, I must say.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, just taking the benefit.
Thank you, Dr. Chandna, for a very lucid and informative presentation. My question is, what is the safety and efficacy of COVID vaccine in asthma patients on steroids and in treated cancer cases, let is post chemotherapy and radiotherapy cases?
All right. In both the cases, to be precise and to the point, cutting to the chase, both should not be vaccinated, because one would be immunocompromised and will have a neutropenia post the chemo and radiotherapy, either or both as a combination therapy. And in the first case, as you've talked about, steroids are contraindicated for COVID-19 vaccine.
But suppose they are old malignant cases, I mean treated cases, old cancer cases, like 10 years, 15 years, not recent.
Right. So what? All right. If it is, then it would depend on the kind of cancer. There are two types of cancers. Quickly, I'll tell you: is germline tumors, and the other are somatic mutations, solid tumors. So, somatic is something which you acquire due to environmental stress on your body. Could be oxidative stress, and could be pollution and stuff like that. So, and the germline tumors would be which go in families, keep you at more risk of inheritance, like the breast cancers or the ovarians and teratomas to a certain extent. So I don't see a problem in the germ cell tumors, but I see that there could be an issue in case we are not staging and have all the information and the history of a patient who was treated about 10 to 12 years ago and does not have a cancer unless it is a germline. If I was able to answer it, usually the cancers which are solid tumors and somatic, which is with the lifestyle problems, do not last to come up again after 12 years gap. They would show up early.
So this contraindication or indication will be case specific as per the
Yeah,
disease.
that's right. Absolutely. So I would select the patient based on the past history.
Yeah. So Dr. Divyansha.
Thank you, Dr. Sandeep Sharma and Dr. Puneet. Just a very quick question, sir, that the participants today are clinicians attached with the various industries and the corporates, not the hospitals. So the basic questions which comes to us as a clinician, occupational physician from the senior management and HR, that let's prepare a strategy to vaccinate our own employees. And the first question is when it is likely to be available for the common public, either Covaxin or Covaxin, Covishield or Covaxin. So what is your judgment, sir?
Right. So I think first is that what you're talking about is should be the strategy besides a traveling norm, which could help, us vaccinate more people timely. And, like we are doing the testing, upon arrival and so on. So from Gujarat to Mumbai, now I heard another patient that, sir, I need a test. Likewise, when we are we should have strategies built in before things come in, because eventually it may be, like work from home was a boon for certain corporates who have given up their rented posh, worth millions of dollars or crores of rupees worth rented out properties. Likewise, I think it'll be a very good and a legitimate way to ensure, uh, you know, safety for the employees. That is number one. Like Dr. Reddy said that we're looking at more of a public good rather than individual good. So that should be, and there are certain places which are unavoidable, like manufacturing units. Of course, marketing is the only department I feel is the person who is going out and trying to spread. Rather, rest of them are contained in one place and should be vaccinated as early as possible, because normalcy would not only mean that the lockdown is eased out or ends and we are going out to eat. It also means a good social human behavior which has to be maintained, and it is a need of every human being, because we being social animals. So with restrictions coming in through regulatories from time to time, it will only elongate, and an aggressive approach can only help. So one should start doing that. And there should be maybe, I don't know if it falls under the purview of IOH, one should in fact look at helping them, like so many people, so many employees to one doctor. There should be so many employees coming in. There should be a norm that they should get vaccinated and come in. And it should not be a big money.
Right.
Spending 700, 800 rupees is not a big thing for a corporate or for an individual.
Once the vaccines are available in the open domain, then definitely corporates have to develop a strategy how to get their employees.
What's the likely duration timeline when the vaccine should be available in the market?
I think
2
no
months, 3
matter of
months, 6
time,
months?
I believe, 4 to 6 months is the time, if not earlier.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
what, else they'll lose the race. If I talk about from a business perspective as well.
Okay. So,
Okay, thank
Dr. Shanbag sir, past president from Mumbai. Yeah. Dr. Shanbag, you're not audible, sir.
I think he's on mute, I think. So we have to unmute him or
Sir,
something.
you have to unmute.
Yeah.
Yeah, now he is.
But it's okay. Thanks, Sandeep, and thanks, Dr. Puneet, for a lovely
Yes, sir.
presentation, making people like me who are technology challenged to understand what this vaccine was all about. Secondly, taking this discussion further about vaccinating employees. You see, I agree that today the whole focus is that getting vaccinated is for public good. So when I decide, the hesitancy comes from whether I am going to take the vaccine for the public good or for my good. If it is for my good, I might be motivated to take it. But if it's public good, I will think whether the risk is good enough or not. So I think the strategy of the government saying that we will corner all the vaccines and we will not give it to the outsiders, like you said, it will take 4 to 6 months. I think they should open it up, because if at least focus it, say suppose corporates are told you can go and take and vaccinate your employees, as a lump sum, not as individuals. I can go and buy it from the market, but the corporates are told you can do this. Then probably the corporates have got a vested interest in saying, if I vaccinate my employees, my business will prosper. My business will at least not have a negative impact of COVID happening to my employees. And they will build strategies to see that the vaccination is 100% of in their companies at least. Once this happens, there will be data available also. And probably government will have a better chance of, sort of saying this data is available, it is not unsafe, it is good, it is preventing. So probably you will be able to sell it much better. So I think, this, doing a public good is one thing which people will take it with a little pinch of salt. But if you tell the corporates that you take it and you can vaccinate your employees, I think there's a better chance that more people will get vaccinated. What is your take on this, Dr. Puneet?
Absolutely, I agree with you. Absolutely, I agree with you, Dr. Shanbag. I think they should open it all at one go.
Absolutely.
Which they, I think, would be forced to, owing to the first sets which are coming in. I'm sorry, I'm crossing the line, but also due to the fact that we may have more and more. Dr. Gajendra would agree with me. More and more wastage also that's coming in between that 4 hours of using the vial. And the same time, when it comes to the corporate and the corporates and the companies and their strategies, I believe they should start speaking, instead of a contact-free delivery, they should say made by or processed by vaccinated people. I think that has to set in.
Correct.
So they can always sell. So they can, repetition or, self-repetition always makes it, media makes it even false news as the truth. So they are capable enough.
I know, but you see, until and unless you get more data, we keep on saying data will not get generated this way. Probably you got a captive audience in the industry, and the industry has got a vested interest to see that they are vaccinated. So I think there should be a strategy to say, okay, let the corporate should. I don't say Shanbag should be able to go to the chemist and get the vaccine. No, I'm saying give it today. Tomorrow you say Indian Oil Corporation is told vaccinate their employees. Fine enough.
Absolutely, like the tax deduction at source.
Absolutely.
That's the way to go.
So you will get data, and I'm sure Indian Oil Corporation within next 2 months probably they will get a 80%, 90% vaccination done. You will get a huge amount of data.
Absolutely.
And because it's a captive population.
Absolutely.
I think,
Twitter and, the large corporates, Reliance and so on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I think there has to be something which need to be taken up with the government and say, allow these captive populations, corporates to take care of themselves. So I think, instead of saying the government will do only this, government will do that, and again the question of free vaccines will go away. No, Dr. Jain raised the issue of who will pay the cost. As soon as you tell the corporates to take care of the employees, the corporates will take care of the cost.
And all above, if you see corporate and government, Indian Railways is the biggest example. 2,500 doctors, 50,000 paramedical workers. We have security forces. We have people on the front line running the core infrastructure in the country.
Absolutely.
13 lakh direct employees and dependent 80 lakhs. So a crore of population is employed through Indian Railways. It could be easily a big database to sell, and they are working all across the country. All of this would have easily followed. I suppose exactly Dr. Sharma has put very important point actually.
Actually, this is important. You see, if Rajiv, I agree with you totally. You got a huge captive population. Reliance has got a captive population. Oil companies have got captive population. I think a few crore of data you will get available within the next 2 months.
In fact, the industry should see that, it should not be an open source data for them. They come vaccinate our people and, participate as a PPP and take the data if they want.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So this answers the question of Dr. Amin Surani also. Can corporate make a policy of compulsion for all employees to take vaccine? Yes, it will be better to make it a compulsory. Maybe the methodologies can be developed. And but his question is from where we will get the vaccines when they are not available in sufficient doses. So that
they'll be available in
another few months.
Yeah, should not be 3 to 4
No,
months.
I am going for step further. If you can get to the Niti Aayog or some governmental agency and say, open it up immediately for the corporates, I think it can be made available earlier. We should start looking at it.
Right.
For your information, sir, already the corporates, they have through their respective ministries, they have approached the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, and these requests, they have been forwarded to the Empowered Group, which is headed by Dr. V.K. Paul, member Niti Aayog. So, and even the this IT based plate companies, they are also approaching through SOCAM, their association. So now private corporates, they are in this pursuit to get vaccines for their employees and for their stakeholders. So
I think with passage of time, things will improve. Certainly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it should happen. Again, like what Dr. Puneet said just now, otherwise, if there is a 50% attendance, I'm sure there's a lot of wastage of the vaccine also.
Yeah.
So last question from Dr. Tyagara sir from Bangalore. Question or comment, whatever.
Sure, please.
Good evening, sir. This is a most informative and knowledgeable and well thought out speech. And you have continuously and constantly you have cleared all our doubts about the vaccine. And we hope that our indigenous vaccine will get a universal recognition, because you are more authentic about ICMR and all. And I just wanted especially this insulin, most genetically engineered this one, like planters and all, and it is got a high universal recognition. And what about this COVID vaccines? About genetically engineered vaccines, so will they have any good recognition or marketing apart from active and inactive vaccine?
Oh, right. So only it is the process currently, so that has been, so which is why the mRNA and the DNA vaccines have been taken up as a, on forefront. But I believe going forward, because like emergency use authorization, the word emergency, the word hurry, the word, panic, the word under pressure, pressed to do so, happens only in pandemics. Otherwise, we have been working, like I said, that, the vaccine, this is not a live vaccine. We are working on a live vaccine in India in 3 centers and trying to do that, use it for cancer cure purposes and treatment. I would say cure because that cures few cancers. So I'm not overstating that. But then for few which are using for treatment purposes, there is a guideline. Nobody can just come in. And it took us at least about 14 months to draw out a plan. So of course there is a strategy, there is a regulatory. CDSCO also has people now who are trained in certain processes for inspection, for audits, and for right up to the end. But then I don't see a rapid vaccination spree in the future for taking into account DNA, RNA, because I think the companies who are driving this, who did it only for certain outbreaks and to get it faster to the market, whereas the conventional vaccines would remain. They might just want to go nasal and oral at the in the future to come, but not an injectable would may not be allowed even to that extent for a general purpose vaccination. It is only emergency use, and it will be matured and it will remain there. I don't see that polio would have a DNA vaccine. No. If that's the question, no, I don't see that. And I don't see many pandemics coming up, though WHO has warned, but then it will go step by step. It will not that DNA and RNA and molecular will replace the conventional pathology. Each one has their own place and importance.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So, thank you, Dr. Puneet Chandna, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
We started with you in May when it was the start of the pandemic. The numbers were rising, and now you have addressed us when the pandemic is always almost on the downside. So we hope this will end and there won't be any second or third wave. And what we
No, but
understand,
Dr. Sharma, pandemic is not on the downside. Pandemic is very severe globally.
no,
Only in
in
India we have seen.
what I'm talking about is in India. In India, it is on downside, and what he has said, ki 25 to 30% people they have been already they are having some sort of immunity, and if we immunize further 20 to 30%, then we are very close to herd immunity, and that is our target, not to eradicate coronavirus, but to control the pandemic in India.
Correct.
So with this note, we would like to conclude this session, sir. Thank you very much. And we have a small certificate designed for you. This was, I think it was not in the first session.
It was a pleasure to be here and learn from Dr. Gajendra. You yourself, are heading, besides your other responsibilities, I've seen everything going very well, and great questions. Dr. Joseph and then Dr. Shanbag, Dr. Pingley. I think, I've learned every time, and, I understand also. It's a pleasure to be a part of IUH. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. And thanks for being a life member of IUH. And definitely we as a family will go further in spreading the learning and the knowledge across and cracking all the myths about different aspects of
Absolutely.
Managing COVID. So thank you very much to all the participants and to you, Dr. Puneet Chandna. And on Saturday, we'll be meeting with a new topic. Last time we talked about, we discussed about the occupational exposure and the cancer management, lung cancer management in fourth stage or terminal stages and targeted therapies. This time we'll be discussing about the air pollution. As Dr. Rajiv said, air pollution is very important aspect which causes lung cancer. So we'll touch upon the air pollution and the lung cancer. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you
everyone
very much.
for being here. Thank you.
Goodbye.